And monitoring events in Egypt from America is analyst and author David Schenker, a senior fellow and director of the Arab Politics Program at the Washington Institute and a former advisor to the Pentagon on Middle East military and political affairs. I spoke to him earlier today from Washington. David Schenker, is there a sense that the US administration is really scrambling to find the right line, the right approach to take with this Egyptian situation?
Well, Washington is essentially walking the razor's edge. They don't want to go too far and demand that Hosni Mubarak leave office and then find, lo and behold, that he manages to retain power, or that a successor regime led by close associates of Mubarak remains in power. At the same time, they don't want to distance themselves from this remarkable democratic opposition movement that's looking for fundamental human freedoms after 30 years of dictatorship. So it's a tough line to hoe.
Is there a concern that if Hosni Mubarak goes, there are still no guarantees that the next regime will be any better than the last?
Well, that's true. There's a lot of confidence that the military is going to hold things together to keep things essentially stable in this state. But nobody knows what the long-term prospects are in free and fair elections take place in Egypt. We believe that the Muslim Brotherhood has 30% or more residual support in Egypt. We also know that the opposition the secular opposition has been decimated over the years and has a tendency to really, I think, for infighting and to eat one's own. So it's unclear that this divided secular opposition would ultimately prevail. And I think a lot of people are concerned about the prospect of Muslim Brotherhood taking power eventually, a group whose senior leaders are on record as saying they would end the peace treaty with Israel. And even the secular opposition, led by people like Mohammed al-Baradei, one of the few things they agree on is that they would end all Egyptian natural gas exports to Israel.
Do you think it's any clearer who is driving or leading these protests? Because it seems there are a number of different groups.
Yeah, well, the remarkable thing about it, I think from the very start, was this is not being fueled primarily by the Islamists, by the Muslim Brotherhood. Certainly they have taken a part in this, but there is a whole group of long-standing Egyptian liberals who have long been brutalized and repressed by the government, who have now come out in recent years. There's an organization called the April 6th Group, which is named after a date of protest that they had some 2 years ago, where they brought a whole bunch of people to Cairo to protest against government misrule. They're very active. You have this coalition that has rallied about the murder of an Egyptian youth named Khalid Amr, who was beaten by Egyptian police, and they've gathered quite a following on Facebook. There's a whole bunch of people who support Mohammed al-Baradei. There are people who support Al-Ghad, whose leader, Ayman Noor, ran against Hosni Mubarak in the 2005 presidential elections. So this is a disparate community of Egyptian liberals and Islamists who are out on the streets demanding change. This demand for change has been at fever pitch in recent years because of the nature of the corrupt, rapacious, incompetent, and brutal government of Egypt.
How do you see this playing out? Is it a case of not if, but when the president goes? And how dangerous and precarious is this situation at the moment?
Well, the army has been, I think, quite disciplined. They've not tried to repress these demonstrations. They're out there protecting key government installations like the Ministry of the Interior. If you have 1 million people come out in the coming days in Cairo, I think that may be more tenuous. Certainly on the ground, people are trying to convince the army, which is a conscript army made up of the people of Egypt, to change sides, to go against Mubarak. Nobody knows really how the army is going to come down. It's quite possible that they'll take the Tunisia route, where the army essentially told Ben Ali in Tunisia that they were no longer going to defend him, that they would not open fire on the crowds, and essentially told him to go. It's quite possible in Egypt But we have to remember the army, the most respected and now the most powerful remaining institution in the country, has vested interests with the regime. They may not need Hosni Mubarak, but I think they feel very comfortable with somebody like General Suleiman, the former, now the vice president of Egypt and one-time head of the Egyptian intelligence. They feel very comfortable with the Prime Minister, Ahmed Shafiq, who was the former head of the Air Force and Minister of Civil Aviation. They don't want this regime, I don't think, to disappear entirely. But it's too early to say how it's going to play out. It's a remarkably dynamic period of time.
David Schenker, thanks for that analysis.
My pleasure.